I have a lung disease called cystic fibrosis. And there's like this kind of weird concept of like, I have to work out or train 3 times as hard to build as much muscle as an average person. And so I ended up training super, super hard. And so, I'd be training parkour 4 hours a day.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Re-Up Recovery, high-quality products that provide fast-acting pain relief. Created by working stunt professionals in the industry, their pain relief roll-on formula allows you to overcome ailments and then relax with anti-inflammatory ingredients in their deep tissue cream. Visit reuprecovery.com and use the code JAM to save 20% off. What's up, guys? Today's guest is a professional parkour athlete and the recipient of the USA Parkour Visionary Award. Please welcome to the JAMCast, Vinnie Coryell. What's up, man?
Yeah, dude, how's it going?
Good, man. Good to see you. Thanks for making this happen. We tried a couple of times, and I know you kind of got sick. So, thanks for making the time in your schedule.
Yeah, man, thanks for your patience, too. I think just kind of going through, had a couple of weird little sickness things, and they were just back to back. And so a lot of things got pushed back. So I appreciate your patience, man. I'm thankful to be here.
No worries, man. It's so crazy and surreal. We're kind of talking about this off camera. Like, we haven't seen each other in so long, and this has been such a great format for me to like reconnect with people from my past, especially within the parkour community. And so I don't think I've seen you in, I don't know, man. I'd say almost a decade, potentially. Like,
the last time, and I think it was brief, was then, I think it was 2017 for the USA Parkour Championships.
Maybe the one in Vegas. Yeah. Super brief.
It was really brief, but I think you were dealing with some shoulder stuff. We kind of talked a little bit, but it was very quick seeing you.
It's crazy to think, I had shoulder surgery all the way back then, and I'm still in physical therapy right now for it. So it's so crazy.
Man, yeah, it's like 5 years. It's like,
which is still half a decade, which is almost just as insane to think about. I think sometimes I forget about how much time passed just with lockdowns alone, that you like lose like 2 years instantaneously that way. So yeah, it's good to see you, man. Where are you located at these days, and where do you call home?
Yeah, so I'm still in Grand Junction, Colorado. It's funny because a lot of people, I haven't posted as frequently, and so when people are like, "Hey, man, where are you at?" I haven't gone anywhere, man. I'm still in Colorado. Like, it's home base for sure. I mean, even if I like travel off and go and do different things, like Grand Junction is home base.
Awesome. And so for those that aren't too familiar with, I guess, the geography of Colorado itself, because obviously there's like a massive parkour scene and tricking scene out there. Where are you at in relation to like Denver or Colorado Springs distance-wise?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually kind of funny because I'm 4 hours from any of the main hubs. Wow. So if you have Colorado as a whole, the east side of Colorado is like Denver, Colorado Springs, Boulder, Fort Collins, where all the major parkour stuff happens. And I'm 4 hours west of that, like 30 minutes from the Utah border. So I'm kind of in this weird space that's just like, it's just very isolated from the rest of the community. But we've made it, kind of our own thing out here, which is ideal, I think.
Yeah. And is that where you started your beginning of your parkour journey, and I guess like everything that got you into movement, or where did that originate at?
I was actually in an even smaller town. So I grew up I was born in Glenwood Springs, which is right in the middle, like fairly, still on more of the western side of the state, but more towards the middle, small town. And then I moved to this place called Silt, and it's like 2,000 people that live there, really small country town. And I had this buddy who, we both talked about parkour at like, we were like 16, I think. And we watched some YouTube videos when all the Freerun videos were coming out, and like Warslav and all that stuff. And we were like, man, we could probably do that. Like we can probably do this. And so we went out to some rocks, like some boulders out in a grassy field, and just started practicing and trying stuff. So kind of a very grassroots startup for parkour.
Man, it's so surreal. Like, we talk about this multiple times on the JAMCast. Like, there's some kids in the new generation that don't know who Danny is. They don't know who Freerun is. And it's like absolutely crazy, because back in the day, Freerun, like, for lack of a better term, was like the equivalent of like loop kicks and tricking. Like, they were one of the premier teams. I mean, they inspired me. I just literally got off a phone call with Sam Parham this morning, who was one of the original members as well. So yeah, it's crazy to hear that name brought back up.
Yeah, dude, that, and I always think of the Speeders too, yes, which is another team that, like, I remember going, we went, dude, it's unreal to think about that. And then Nitro Parkour too. Yes. And the fun thing is seeing all these guys and how they've transitioned out like throughout the world, but people don't know where they started. And they're still like popular in the scene right now, but they're just not under those names or those titles anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, I see occasionally some of those guys like do a trick, or I'll see something online and I'm like, wow, they're still training, still pushing it. So it's pretty cool to see. There are a few names that have like, I guess, withstood the test of time. It's cool to see like Jason Paul still a figure. Philly D is still out there putting out videos with Capstone, and it's pretty inspiring to see, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's kind of funny to think about, like, so I guess I've been doing parkour for almost 15 years now. And just to consider like the changes physically that I've had from like 17 to now, like I guess, 16 to now. And just to, to see somebody who's still doing parkour as well, if not better, after 15 years of training. Like, I'm not in that space anymore, which is, I've like well accepted that. And like, and just lifestyle changes. So that, but man, it is super inspiring to see when Iwabaka, like when Danny jumps in and does stuff here and there with everything that he's doing with his film projects. I mean, it's cool, man. It's really cool.
Yeah. I'd say the one thing that I like kind of regret is that right now, because of all the injuries I have, I'm actually like in physical therapy a few times a week. I actually feel stronger than I ever was. I should have been doing all this cross training and stabilizer muscle building and all of these things to help my training way back in the days. I feel stronger than I am now. It's just the consequences are a lot greater. The recovery time is so much more immense that like, I just can't push it like I want to, but I physically feel like, man, I may be able to do things I wasn't able to ever do before, just strictly off a strength basis, you know?
Yeah. Which is a cool place to be too. Cause I think that's just it, right? Like you have this defined muscle buildup over time, like from the consistency of movement. So your technical abilities still grow, because it's like from a control standpoint, movement so well, but then when your body breaks down and you have to rebuild it back up, it's almost like, I don't know if you want to call it like armor, like it's developing the skill set that makes it even easier to do movement, but also harder because your body's falling apart, like to some degree.
Exactly. I know just between you and I, just personally, I know both of us have probably put on like 15, 20 pounds comparatively to when we first met each other. And it's almost like that. It's like that man strength thing that they talk about as you get older, so to speak. Like you finally put on muscles and develop a little bit later and things like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's probably been the biggest change. Dude, I mean, it depends on how deep you want to go down this rabbit hole. Because
I'm down to go as deep as you are too, because I know you have a super unique story, and obviously I don't want it to be something that defines you, but obviously it's a huge part of who you are as a person. So
yeah, my health, I guess I'll just kind of kick off with that, because when I have a lung disease called cystic fibrosis. So it's a lung disease, pancreatic disease. It actually deals a lot with absorption of nutrients too. And I think that's one of the things that is overlooked, right? So when I was growing up, I had problems absorbing nutrients to be able to build muscle properly. And there's like this kind of weird concept of like, I have to work out or train 3 times as hard to build as much muscle as an average person, 2 to 3 times as much. And I knew that was the case. And so I ended up training super, super hard. And so, I'd be training parkour 4 hours a day, like just hard for 5 days straight, and then take a couple of days. And then, so I was training super hard. My progression level was great because I was learning something like every single day. But I could never put on like real muscle. I could never really put on real mass because of just, I just couldn't. And I tried, man. I mean, I really did. And 2 years ago, at this point, I started this new medication that they came out with. And it's a game changer, man. Like it's called Trikafta, and it's essentially the closest thing to a cure without being a cure. And I want to say that cautiously, right? Because, you throw around the word cure and people are like, oh my gosh, you're good. But it's a genetic modifier. And so it goes through and it teaches and tells the body what it's supposed to do. And essentially, like before that, compared to now, like 2 years later, I mean, like you said, I put on 25, 30 pounds. I was able to actually build muscle mass, and my lung functions are the highest they've ever been, which it's a progressive disease. And so my lungs were getting worse. Like I was coughing up blood every 6 months, getting sick, crazy lung infections, in the hospital for 2 weeks at a time. And then I started this medication, and it was like all this like junk just cleared out of my lungs. And then I have the highest lung functions I've ever had. Like it's unbelievable.
That is crazy. Yeah, I saw a couple of your posts dedicated to shouting out that new medication, and it's so insane to see that as we get older, hopefully technology will continue to advance. That's what I'm hopeful for will happen with all of my joints, that like maybe we'll have a chance to survive a little bit longer as a result of that, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly, man. Yeah, it's been a huge blessing, man. But again, it changes your movement, right? So like tossing on 25, 30 pounds and then trying to jump, it's like, dude, I can still do it. It's just really hard. Like I can.
100%. And so how often do you find yourself training these days? Are you still doing it for fun or just as something as like cross training to pass the time? Or what does parkour mean to you now comparative to back then when we met?
Sure. No, that's a good question, man. I think it's been really interesting because I went through I owned a gym for 7 years. And when I was in that space, I was training, pretty regularly, 2, 3, 4 times a week. And then because of everything that happened with COVID, we're in kind of a smaller town. It's like 150,000 people in the area. And man, it just crushed us. Like people were pulling back. We were basically the whole year of 2020, we were just drowning in it and had to make this decision and make this call. And, it was just me as a sole owner at this point. And so I had to just make it move, make a transition. And so we shut the gym down. And so my training changed tremendously. So it's been a little over a year. And so it went from like training, 4 or 5 times a week to almost non-existent for a little while. And I wasn't training just as far as movement was concerned, because it was like this kind of emotional processing. And like, I just spent so much time and effort putting into this gym and into families and the kids and like wanting to see that go on. And then when it all broke, it was like, man, how do I need a break. And I just kind of like breathed for a minute. And my training changed. It turned into like more of conditioning and weightlifting and just like moving and like in different environments, like hiking and climbing and, so it kind of just changed. And I think in the last 3 or 4 months as it really started to just dawn on me, like how much I love the movement of parkour and how much I missed it. So having that little breather, that little break and coming back reinvigorated, but not having the skill sets or the movements because of like losing it, it's just been like one of the most confusing, like awesome and exciting things. Cause now I get to go back to it and approach it from the standpoint of like, no, I really love this. And I don't have to be the best at it. I don't have to be great at it. I just want to enjoy it. So I'm teaching a couple classes throughout the week and just like getting together with friends that have been training in the area still. And man, it's just such like I said, a reinvigorated passion for why I started parkour in the first place, was because it was challenging. It was something that was unique. And it was something that like I could pace myself in because my health would keep me back from other sports. But this, I can just like, I can go and I can enjoy it for 20 minutes. I can train for 2 hours and it doesn't matter because it's still something that I can just enjoy. Yeah.
It's pretty cool, man. I'm kind of in a similar boat, and I find like a lot of people from our generation either A, just don't do it at all anymore, or B, they kind of got reinvigorated and re-inspired by just finding a love for movement again. I didn't train for years just because of work and scheduling, and then I recently had a good friend of mine who is a Red Bull sponsored tricker, Payne, who discovered parkour a couple of years ago, and now he's just 24/7 obsessed with parkour. And because of him, he's pulled me out from my couch, got me out here training with him, taking him to old spots. And yeah, there's some times when I'm out there with him where I'm like, I would never do this again. I'll show him an old video. I'm like, I just don't have the mental capacity to even try this anymore, but you should try it. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of funny to be able to like talk him through some things. And at the same time, like you said, just be happy just moving for a brief amount of time, even if it's just a 20-minute session here or there, and not doing it for the sake of trying to get better or even get clips necessarily, but just like having fun, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's wild. That's like exactly where I'm at. Because I have this friend, her name is Michaela Quinn. She actually just took first place. She's kind of starting to come up out of the woodwork. I think people are starting to notice her a little bit. I taught her for a long time, and then she's kind of just taken her own path with parkour. And so she's been kind of a really encouraging force of being like, hey, I'm wanting to do world chase tag. I'm wanting to do these speed competitions. Like, will you come train with me, please? Like, let's just like push it. And so kind of the same light, right? Like she's kind of like helping pull me out of not training anymore. And so that's been a super cool, like exact same thing. And I've been watching videos, man. He's been throwing down some stuff lately. It's been so cool.
The progress is insane. I was worried that when he got into the sport, he would just be one of these guys that just basically flips everywhere and does all of his tricking moves off of height. But he's really dedicated himself to like actually getting into the fundamental elements of parkour. He's obsessed with sticking precisions. He loves doing K to Ps, and like that to me has been the most rewarding thing, to try to like guide him on this journey of like actually understanding like, you know, the foundation of our sport as opposed to just drawing upon his strengths, you know.
Yeah, and it's definitely showing in his clips too. Because I follow. The funny thing is, like, I follow all these people. I've been following them. It's not like I just like. I think for other people, they see me like post every once in a while. They're like, oh, I totally forgot. Like Vinnie was here. Like it's a thing. And then, but I'm like I'm like watching everything that's happening. And so to get to see where Bailey has gone in the last couple of years and like how he's transitioned his movement, and like, you know, I met him briefly at that same place that I saw you last in Vegas, right? And like don't know much about him or anything like that, but like he's a huge inspiration, and the way that he's developed his style and changed it after he's been in such a specific rhythm for so long has been so cool to see that, like, and to know that you can tell that it's like parkour focused. Like he desires that just from the videos. Like you can tell in people's movement what they're actually focusing on. And yeah, that's cool that you're getting to hang out with them and see that progress from the back end. Cause I like, you know, we only see the videos of it, but
it's crazy, man. And what's so crazy is that, like, I won't even lie, like when I first started with him, and maybe he doesn't want me to put this out there, but like he was relatively very scared of the concrete when we first started. Even doing, you know, tiny precisions, just the risk factor comparative to being on a spring floor your entire life was just, you know, he had obviously been able to do double backflips on concrete for quite some time. But I find that when you take trickers and put them in real life world scenarios with rails, with tiny ledges, and then going to elevated heights, it completely takes you out of this like comfortability that you have both physically and mentally. And so the coolest thing to me has been, it's not only seeing his physical progression, but his mental progression, where now he'll look at things and I'm like, really? Like, you're going to try that? And he's like, yeah, I got this. And I'm like, dude, I'll film it. Like, I'm not doing that, but I got you on camera, bro. Give me the iPhone, you know? Yeah, it's so good.
That's special.
Yeah, man, super blessed to witness that. And so for those that don't know, man, like one of the coolest things about getting able to reconnect with people like yourself here is also just to, you know, show some of the younger generation people that were, you know, crucial to the movement, especially here in the United States way back in the day. Because for lack of a better term, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like we've always been a little step behind Europe. I feel like the guys in the UK and out there in Europe have always pushed the levels significantly, whether that was at heights or with just, you know, the power behind their movements, obviously with Danny at some point and Storm being a player, Freerun being a major force for Rang. But there were tons of individuals like yourself and Justin Schaefer and, you know, Dylan Baker and all kinds of guys that have always pushed the levels here in the US. And I feel like one thing people may not even know about you is that at one point you competed at 5 Red Bull Art Emotions over the course of your career as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. What do you want me to talk about those? Or
I want to know if you remember what you won Sickest Trick for in 2011. Do you remember what it was?
Dude. Oh, I totally do. Okay. It was so funny too because like it was for a roll bomb, but it was like up a hill. So like there's this. So we're in Kuwait, right? This is a wild too because this is the first place I went out of the country. Like I just got my passport and they're like, yeah, so we really want you to come out to this competition with me. It'd be great. It's in Kuwait, and I was like, can I even go there? Like it's this like, you know, I'm like 18 years old and I like have never been out of the country, and I was like, yeah, let me talk to some people and make sure, like, you know, I was like making sure it was safe. There was just this whole concern about it, and I remember talking to some buddies and they were like, dude, Kuwait is legit. Like, you need to go to Kuwait. And so kind of eased my tension. And I was like, you know what, we'll go. And that experience for going, like the first place out of the country, it was just wild, like complete culture shock. And I was like one of the first people to get there too. I think Jason Paul and I shared a room when I got there, and he had already been there. And so I like show up to our hotel area and I was completely by myself and just kind of like, I just like didn't know. It was such a process of like getting to so by the time we actually like made it out to that island, because we were on an abandoned island in the middle of the Persian Gulf, and it's just like they're like, okay, you have a Mini Cooper, you have a guide, you have a camera, and I was on a team with Sean Wood, Kai Willis, Ryan Doyle. It was like the most. It was so cool, and I was like. And they drew it out of a hat too. So we're on this ferry on the way there and they're drawing names. And I was like, you're kidding me? Like I get to be with these guys. Like this is going to be so much fun.
The lone American as well just kind of like plays into my whole story, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it was funny too because Justin Schaefer and I were the only two Americans that went out to that competition, and so that was really special for us because we only lived 4 hours away from each other because he's from Colorado too, and so we were already pretty good friends, and so to go out there together was just a cool experience. So getting back to like the roll bomb situation, right? So we're out on this island, and because they gave us this Mini Cooper and a guide to drive us around, like we had 36 hours to film a parkour video. And it was cool to have Kai and Sean a part of that because they were so much into the artistry of film at the time, and they had these ideas, and Store was coming out with some really neat videos, and so they were really pushing this idea of like we should just do. They had it all laid out, and I was like, cool, I'm down for whatever. Just let me move around and play, and like you guys can film it, and we'll have a good time. And so we did this setup to where we had like outros almost of like each of the individuals. So it was like, Sean and him standing there doing something. Ryan was like sitting on a toilet, and then like he pulls up his pants and does a congainer in this really sketchy spot. And I get out of the Mini Cooper, and I run across the street and then roll bomb up this hill. And roll bombs at the time were also kind of like, it was a rare movement to see. Let alone it was just a weird setting. And I probably played with that thing for like 30, 40 minutes before I even got around to actually landing it. And there was a big part of me that was like, I don't deserve best trick for this. Like, it just didn't feel, I was like, man, I feel okay about it, but I didn't feel great about it. But the reveal of each of the videos was in a movie theater in Kuwait City. Okay. And we got to sit down and they screened our videos on these, on a big screen. And I just remember Kai, like kind of looking around because we were all the ones that were voting. Like we got to vote for the best trick, we got to vote for the best team, and so it's actually the athletes that got to choose kind of how this went. And Kai's like kind of looking around everybody. He's like, hey, dude, we should, Vinny, he's got to do it. He's got the best trick. Like we got so he kind of rallied, and I remember sitting there just being like this young kid, like not even knowing what's going on and just feeling so respected and honored for like this one moment. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent on there, but that was like one of the coolest experiences that I've had for sure.
Yeah, man, especially to just be surrounded by so many peers at like an upper echelon level of skills way back in the day. Like the names that you named were some of the guys that were most recognized in the sport at the same time. And to be on your team and for you to stand out within that video it speaks very highly. It's so cool.
Yeah, it was wild. It was a huge, I think it was like I had already done 2 Red Bull competitions at that point because there was one in Tampa. It was the first one in the US, and then they had Detroit. Yeah. And so that was the follow-up to that. And so I had already been in the competition atmosphere already, but it was such a different take. Like I wish, and I'm pretty sure Justin Schaefer would say the same thing, and probably did say the same thing in the last video, if I recall. They should do more events like that. Mm-hmm. Like if they did, I understand there's like the draw of like, you have to have it viewable and there has to be money that comes into it. And I understand there's like a lot of workings business wise, but as far as like from a competitor standpoint, getting to go out and just like create and enjoy and play in this new space and not have like this tremendous amount of pressure to perform right then and there. It just, some of the videos, like the first place video was like Tim Sheaf and Will Sutton, I think Kevin Fleury and Sergio Steele, Sergio Coryell, right? Yeah. And they made just such a phenomenal video because they had so much time to just create. And I think I would love to see platforms like that happen and open up again.
Yeah, I agree, man. Honestly, as someone that was a part of MTV's Ultimate Parkour Challenge as well, I thought the coolest part of those episodes was when they made the videos. The live competition aspect of it was, in my opinion, kind of boring. I know they do it because they want the risk factor of something going wrong or incredibly right live. But yeah, in my personal opinion, videos have been such a huge instrumental part of our culture just from its origin stories. That's how the majority of us were inspired to even start the journey, was by watching other videos. So I would love to see that brought back into competition.
Yeah, and I don't know what it even look like. I think it'd be cool. Man, as I say this, right, I'm like this, just kind of these ideas come up in my head. I'm like, hey, we should do this. So if anyone's watching this and anyone wants to like throw some money at creating a video competition where you get teams together, so and I know Red Bull did that for Run the City, which is another one that they did. Yeah, we did that too. And that was a really fun experience to do. But again, when you all go to the same place and you all have the same environment and create videos in that space, like it was Tempest, guys, you're doing the Kings of Concrete thing coming up soon. Just like drag on a little video competition in there too. I'll come and help out, man.
For real, man. Dude, yeah, we should talk about this. Maybe we can make it happen somehow. I feel like it would be cool to just mix up the scene, and also, like you said, for some people, they just don't do well in live competition. Like there are some guys who, for example, Dominic DiTommaso has never ever made like the podium. I don't think at major Red Bulls. Maybe he has, but in videos, he is a monster. Like I watch his clips and I'm just like, holy crap, this guy is Superman. But live, he obviously can't take as many risks, or it just doesn't read as well. So it'd be cool to give him a chance to showcase his skills.
Yeah. Well, because I think there's this element of like, especially with Dom too, right? Like I guarantee you the prep and the thought process and, just giving it some time to actually like work up to this idea of doing this movement. You can't throw that into a live platform. I mean, you could, but it's different when you can go out and you can choose like out of this whole environment, this whole area, like one thing I'm going to focus on and then film it and like promote it in an essence of what it is and the challenge that comes behind it versus, on the spot, like you got people watching, you should probably do this or else. Like there's just a totally different platform and atmosphere that comes from those two styles of training and movement and even competition formats. I think it'd be so cool to see what athletes like Dom would be able to do in that kind of setting.
Totally, man. And now for someone like yourself that's competed at 5 art emotions, like we said, even Santorini, do you still watch the current competitions, and what do you think is the biggest difference between now and back then?
Oh man. Yeah. It's funny I bring up Santorini. That was fun, man. I had such a good time on that trip because it was my last like big competition too, I believe. And I think looking back at like how they've transitioned, even just Red Bull or, I also fortunately I've been able to go and judge competitions. So I went out to NAPC and I got to judge alongside like George McCowan and Daryl Stingley and Kai Willis again. So that competition format versus like USA Parkour competition format, or even like Apex and the way that they do things are very similar to Sport Parkour League. Man, it's crazy just to see what routes parkour has taken, right? Because when I was competing, it was strictly like on the large scale, it was strictly just style performance competitions, right? So you're strictly just you get to create your lines, you get to create your own movements and put together things, and then you're judged based off of criteria, right? Now there's skill competitions, which is I never got into those, but I feel like had I would have loved doing skill competitions because it's just really unique, difficult challenges. And some of the skill challenges that I've seen at like Apex International are nuts, dude. Like, and the atmosphere in the area when someone completes it, I mean, it's just like, dude, we got to watch this process. I mean, the bails and the warm-ups and the practices for it. It's such a fun style of competition. And then there's the speed element now becoming a lot more prevalent and a lot more popular to at least on a larger scale, right? And I think I want to say Sport Parkour League really kind of stepped that level up. Like once they started, their platform of regional to finale, like I guess their main championship competition, it just changed the atmosphere and kind of the flow of how people wanted to compete too. And so like when I started competing, it was like, well, I want to compete in whatever there's available, and it was style. And so I kind of formulated my movements off of that, right? And so a lot of my movement was trick based. And then once I stopped doing the competing platform, I just kind of started doing mostly just parkour stuff. Yeah. But I was past that place of being able to compete in the style and or the skill and the speed portions. I just hadn't had the desire to push for that. So I don't know. I think it's changed a tremendous amount, and I think it's really exciting to see athletes be able to push parkour movements in a competitive setting and be rewarded for it. Like really, truly, like given their justice for the type of movements and the style, and or not the style, but the scale, like the scope of the movements that are happening in these skill competitions is insane.
It's crazy. The amount of people that can do triple variations now just absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, dude. Like when like a roll bomb was such a thing that was like, whoa, or like Congainer, like a single Congainer in any competition was like, this is nuts. But like what it was, Nova City just did their competition, and dude, I was like watching it and even just like the Sukes and like the dubs and like just, I mean, pretty much anything in there was just so high level. And to be able to transition movement to movement of such high level of skills is just, I mean, it's phenomenal, man. It's truly inspiring.
Yeah, I feel like in our generation, there was almost a big disconnect between flow and skill, so to speak. There was a lot of guys that could throw down big tricks, but their biggest criticism was like, oh, they have no flow at all. Now it's almost like every single guy that competes has transitionary moves or is able to seamlessly link them, or they at least just understand from having seen so many examples of competition before, like what it takes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, and I think Joey Adrian is a prime example of that too. And I don't know how much, I know he's like kind of stepped away from competition as much, but I think he's always been such a prime example of like what it looks like to really throw high level moves and transition them super well and seamlessly together, because he used to make these runs that were 60 seconds long. He was like, crazy. I'm going to put in as many tricks as possible in 60 seconds and they'd look really smooth. And then I think if he were in competition now, I think he'd be challenged, because there are so many people who do that now so consistently and so well. And I know for a fact, I'm pretty honest with myself, there's no way I'm going to compete in any style competitions coming up, because I just couldn't be able to link them up in that way, man. Like, and let alone just the big tricks in themselves, right?
Yeah, the level has changed so much. It's really, really cool to see the progression. I think one of the other things I'm really excited to see is the as you know from someone you're training with right now, the influx of female competitors has been astronomical compared to back in the day when we just, would have Lucy Romberg show up. Maybe occasionally there'd be some additional ones like Pamela Forrester that got into the mix, but now it's really cool that there's like a whole contingency of female competitors throwing down very difficult tricks, very difficult lines and stuff that's super impressive.
Oh yeah. And that's the cool thing too, is like, I think you can just see, I don't know if I want to say this carefully, right? Like, there is just a shift in the way that people perceive sport as a whole. And so it's creating this environment of inclusivity and people coming into parkour that you wouldn't expect normally to come into parkour. Like even now, I think, so we were training downtown Grand Junction a couple of days ago, and it's just like pretty casual light. And this couple came up and they're in their 40s and they were like, hey, we saw you doing parkour. And like, we took parkour classes out in Denver. Like, and is there a way that we can come and train with you guys? They're like in their 40s and super don't care. They're like, we know all about parkour. We know what it's like. We took classes. We had fun. We just want to come around and jump around and bounce and like have fun. Like, just, it's crazy how it went from, back like, 5-10 years ago, even you're out training and people just look at you weird, or they say like, oh, cool, or like, kind of mock, or they're just like, hey, please stop doing that, to people that you would not even expect to come up and approach you and be like, dude, that is so cool, or like, I've done that before, or like, let me join with you. And I think that has just included so many unique competitors to people that wouldn't approach it initially or now approaching it. I know that there's is there any competition for like higher age platform at this point? I don't think there is yet.
Not that I know of. That's a good question, because there are in so many other sports, like, yeah, there isn't that I know of. That could be something also to throw into the mix.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, going back to what we were saying though, the female aspect of parkour and how it's been growing has been super cool. And actually getting to talk to Michaela and hear her perspective on it and kind of, where she's gone as an athlete, because she used to, when we were competing, she was probably the only female athlete in her age group, when she was younger. And she would just compete and put herself out there, right? But she was like, I don't know, there's no other females to train. And then she just gets back from USA Parkour Comp, right? And she comes in and she's like, dude, there was like 7-8 females and it was really fun and we got to compete and I really got to push myself. And like, I think it'll be curious. I'm curious to see how these next 2-3 years go for competitions, because I'd love to see just like full competitions, just the full competitions and just people pushing themselves, because they already are. And I think Nova City's a good thing to look at and compare it to, maybe not compare, but like see how US is doing on the same lines. Like when we look at Europe's big competitions and the US's big competitions, I want to see more international competitions. Everybody is like just in one spot, from like all the US top athletes and South American and just like Australian competitors, Asian competitors, like everyone in one space. and really see like a world championship scale parkour competition or movement competition in general.
Yeah, totally. I think one of the other cool paradigm shifts that I've seen, and I don't know if you could agree with me or disagree with me on this, but back when we started, there was a huge divide between parkour purists and people that were quote unquote free runners. And there was a huge divide between people that were like, oh, you don't do parkour, you're just a guy that runs around and does flips. And there was this huge disconnect between the communities where it almost was like a negative thing, in my personal opinion. I feel like now it's almost like become more inclusive in the sense that people just respect movement in general, and they kind of just all encompass it under the name of parkour right now. It hasn't become so put into a box, if that makes sense. I think stores had a huge part to play with that, with how, a lot of the store members really just focus on practical parkour movements as opposed to flipping. But then obviously you have other guys like right now, like Travis Verkey, absolutely killing the scene, as long as George PK doing flips and Ed Scott, So I think that has been also one of the coolest things to witness, is that the acceptance of all parts of movement is just being under the parkour umbrella.
Yeah. I think I remember that being such a struggle, even in Colorado. Yeah. I think there was, because Colorado is such a hub of parkour athletes and tricker, they're just distinctly trickers, there's distinctly parkour athletes, and there's this in between where like if you threw flips into anything, or it was like, a Webster at the end of a line or whatever, like people would kind of be like, well, like this guy doesn't really do parkour, and then there was this justification of front flips where it's like, well, front flips are actually more efficient than jumping over some things. And so there's like it's way more efficient to front flip over this rail than to Kong it. So therefore flips to parkour. There's just like this whole conversation on it. And yeah, it is really cool to see that, because it's like I guess it's style, speed, and skill, and they're all parkour. There's no like separation between like, oh, here's I saw a headline for this. I didn't watch it. I don't know if you watched it, but Seb came out, Sebastian Foucan.
You put out like a live stream type thing, yeah.
Yeah, where he like spoke out against like it was a mistake calling it free running or something like that.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it, and I don't want to like say that, but I remember seeing that, and I was curious if you know what happened with that.
I don't want to misspeak on it either, but I know exactly the talk that you're talking about. And it was a very interesting one in a lot of ways. And I think, it was divisive within the community, especially in our generation back in the days where like literally parkour and free running were looked at as two completely separate things. And it's refreshing now to see that it's all just kind of accepted under the same umbrella,
Yeah. And I think that's probably why the level of movement has progressed so quickly in the last couple of years, because there's no longer this like, oh, you can only go to this competition if you get a style of movement, or you can only go to this. It's just like people just go, and people who maybe specified in parkour movements and then you have these people who specify in style movements, they're just all in the same place and just training. And it's just like, there's gotta be some kind of shift that created that level of progression, because similar to like snowboarding, how all of a sudden it just like took off, parkour is doing the same thing right now. And so I'm sure that lack of conversation of like, is this parkour, is this free running, is this tricking, is this not, the levels just like, you see it every week, there's something crazy that's coming out and nobody cares, they're just like stoked about it.
Exactly. Oh, it's crazy, man. And now for someone that went from competing in multiple world championships to, like you said, having the opportunity to judge some of these competitions, I know one other thing you got to do recently was be a referee on World Chase Tag.
Yeah.
And so how'd you get involved in that, and what does that entail,
Dude, it's so funny, too, because, like, so Mark T. Rock, he's, gem of a human being. He was, like, kind of just, like, figuring out how to get all this stuff on a platform in the U.S., and I remember he reached out to me to put together a team for World Chase Tag. And so he was like, if you want to put together a few of your guys, and then you compete in it as well, we'd love to have you out there. And at the time, I'm pretty sure I was dealing with some weird knee stuff. Like my knee was just kind of agitated, and I was doing some rehab for it. And I really didn't want to like put myself on that platform. And so I was like, yeah, man, honestly, like I probably won't put a team together. But if you have anything else that you want me to do, I'd love to be a part of it. So he's like, yeah, no worries, man. I'll let you know. And so he, I don't hear from him from a couple of days. And then he messaged me on Blue. He's like, hey man, you want to ref? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like if I could be there and be a part of that, absolutely. Like we're bringing World Chase Tech to the US. Like, so it was kind of a cool platform for me to get involved in it. And I know there was a lot of behind the scene key players, like Ryan Ford was there and Taylor Carpenter. They were a big part of it. Adam Cozy, if you know Cozy at all, he's man, he's also surreal. He was the head ref for that. And so we really got to like, being behind the scenes, and I literally got to watch every single chase. Like there's 500 chases or something like that in a day and a half. Got to watch every single chase from the sideline. There was points where I was like cleaning up blood off of the floor and stuff like that for people like in their heads and stuff. It was like exactly how you'd want to experience World Chase Tag. And so let alone like getting to watch it and experience it as a ref, but like as a I guess just a fan of World Chase Tag was such a cool experience. And I'm really glad that they called me out for it. And I was hoping to do it this last year, but there's some things that came up and I wasn't able to go out there and from both their end and my end. And so hopefully I can be involved with it more in the next coming seasons.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing they got introduced into our sport. Like I wish that it was almost around back in our heyday, or back when a lot of other guys were in the sport. Like, dude, I would have loved to have seen Danny play chase tag. Like, it would have been crazy, man.
Dude, speaking of Danny in that environment, there was this day that he came to Colorado and we were at an Apex gym, and it was this surreal experience. This guy named Peter Chastity is a good friend of mine, and Daniel Labaka, and we're all kind of standing on top of these rails at Apex, and he just starts playing. And I just watch him, like how he moves, like he just kind of plays, moves around. And so I was watching him, and then like I kind of did the same thing. And then Peter came into the same thing. And all of a sudden we're all on top of these rails just kind of playing around. And it was almost like we're like tag, like we're kind of jumping around. No words. We weren't saying a thing. We were just like, there wasn't like, it was just so peaceful of a moment. And I remember talking to him afterwards, and he's like, if you're thinking of the movement as it's happening, put too much stake in your thought process in it, and it removes the ability to be able to enjoy and process the movement as it's happening. And if you were to take that process into World Chase Tag, or even into any platform of a movement, just imagine, like, I think he had so much wisdom and understanding of movement in his body, and like how he was just so articulate and thoughtful about everything that I would, man, yeah. We got it on a very special level, and I'm very thankful for that. I would love to see that in the parkour community today, for sure.
100%. He was very philosophical way back in the day. It's something that isn't really at the forefront of the movement right now, or we don't really have a speaker like that necessarily, in my personal opinion, that was dedicated to, talking about theory and mindset and stuff so publicly, like him. I remember Choose to Fall, Choose Not to Fall. That was a gigantic video within the space back in the time. And so, yeah, Danny has always just been such a pivotal figure. I can't wait to get him on here. He just refuses to do it on Zoom. He said we have to do it in person. And I'm like, whatever you say, man. If you say yes, that's all that matters,
Man, and how many people are going to come out of the woodworks and be like, dude, I'm posting this. I haven't done parkour for 10 years, but I'm still posting it because he's on there.
It's going to be I cannot wait to get him on here. So, Danny, if you're watching, I'm still holding you to it. When you come to LA, we're making it happen. So it'll happen eventually.
I will also hold you to that, Danny. Like, come on. We want to see this happen.
Let's do, man. And so one of the things I also wanted to talk to you about is, as I mentioned at the start of this, I know that you were also the recipient of the Visionary Award presented to you by USA Parkour. And I just wanted to talk to you just kind of about like what that meant to you. And, I guess it's very rare that we get awarded things outside of just competing at a competition and showing your physical prowess, if that makes sense. And so I know that was a very special and unique award, and obviously deservedly so went to you. So I just want to congratulate you and just kind of, see what your thoughts were on receiving that.
Yeah, thanks, man. That was a shock to me. Like I was actually supposed to go out to, it was awarded at the USA Parkour competition back in 2019. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to go out there and judge a competition. I actually ended up getting really sick. So I was coughing up blood. I was like, guys, my lungs are super infected right now. Like I can't come out. And I had to go into the hospital. And so I didn't get to go out to the event. I was kind of bummed, but I also got to send out a couple of my students. So they were going out there to compete. And it was really special because I think a big part of this award was just, I don't even know the process of like, how they chose it or how they kind of went about it, because I really wanted to talk to them in person more about it, but I didn't get the chance to. But from what I understand, like the way that they go about that is like someone who is kind of going outside of themselves to like build this idea and this vision of what parkour can be in a community with other people. And it really spoke to like what I guess what was happening at the gym, where out here in Colorado. And I had this group of kids that I just love. I still love them, man. I love them so much. And I would spend, I developed these training programs and these ideas and a lot of stuff that they don't really know that I was doing, but I was spending intentional time with them and pointing to them as people, as like almost like a mentorship, so that their athleticism wasn't their identity, right? And so we spent a lot of time, it's like spending time with them, and we'd go on these cool trips for like just for jams. We'd go to like different gyms and like check out those gyms, do workshops, hang out, and they developed into such incredible athletes and people. And I'm just so thankful and blessed that I was able to be a part of their lives for the time that it was. And I think that that's a huge role of what played into me getting that Visionary Award. It's just I pursued people in the gym and in environments like competitions, and like I just have such a passion and a love for people and like for people's hearts and their stories and like who they are. And so receiving that award was like, I mean, it was a huge honor. I couldn't believe it. And I was watching the live stream of the competition. And yeah, one of my students got to receive it for me, and he brought it back. And for him to receive that award, and then for them to be able to speak about me in that space, like I think it was just a really full circle special moment. And I just remember like sitting there crying, like I just couldn't believe that was what was happening in that moment. And yeah, it was I don't know what else to say. That was a huge honor.
Super cool, man. Super cool. And so now obviously we talked about everything that you've accomplished within the space and especially specifically within your parkour journey. What's the focus of life right now? Like what are you doing day to day and what's on the agenda, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, man. It's changed a lot. Because like I said, with the gym, right? So I had a gym for 7 years, and we had to shut down in 2020, very end of 2020, so it was December, because of COVID stuff, man. We were just in such a rough, weird spot. And I know a lot of gyms were, and like we're in such a small town, and it just kind of, had to make a shift, had to make a transition out of that. So I kept running a program out of a gymnastics gym and out of a CrossFit gym for a little while, and was still teaching, but it just like didn't feel the same. And I was like, man, what are my motivations behind this? Am I just doing this because I've done it, or like, am I doing it because I want it? So I took a step back from teaching and training parkour for a little bit. I just kind of took a breather. And it was it was really good because it was just a release of a burden that I had been carrying, this weight of like, I got to do all this stuff because I've been doing it. And I just kind of let that go. I was like, cool. Like, I don't have to do parkour forever. I don't have to teach parkour forever. This doesn't have to be my identity, because I was creating an identity in this sport, right? And so kind of releasing that was really healthy. And so what it transitioned is to other passions and other things that I really enjoy doing. And one of them being photography and videography. I spent so much time in the gym filming and doing photos and like just creating that extra space for art. And so I just spent time like kind of putting myself out there for that, and I just ended up doing freelancing for creative work. And so last year I had like a job, just some kind of really cool creative job where I was able to either film a wedding, which was kind of newer to me too. I'm glad someone took a shot on me for it. They really enjoyed it. I had a really good time. Or like just different businesses in town. And so now I actually have some contracts where I'm running content creation and social media management for different companies in town, like local businesses who I love. I loved what their mission is, what their vision is. And so I've kind of just like started to develop this passion for, like I said, for people and businesses who are wanting to change people's lives and be a part of people's lives. And so that's been such a huge element of what I'm doing right now. So I mean, and it's been such a, man, it allows for me to have flexibility for my health, because if I'm locked into like a full-time job or work, whatever, and I get sick, then it's, it's like, I have never been able to get a full-time job because they would literally, like I tell them about that. Like there are 2 weeks out of the year, sometimes maybe more, that I can't be here because I'm in the hospital. Like, well, that's like the defining factor of why we can't hire you. And it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? Like, so yeah, now it's just like really, I'm in this space, this really unique space of just creating relationships with people, and creating art. And it's kind of unique and special.
Hell yeah. Super, super cool, man. And it all just leads to, I'm a big believer that like some of us aren't artistic, but we speak through our movement, whereas others like you are able to express yourself through also, photography and freelance and things like that. So it's cool to see that you're able to combine both passions and also have that flexibility in your schedule. So
yeah. Yeah. The one other thing I want to add in there too, that's really been taking my heart lately is so I work with my church, right? And so we do a lot of ministry outreach stuff. And so at the moment I'm mentoring a group of guys and spending a lot of time with them, and like I think this kind of gets tumultuous, and like kind of people get this armor on, like this guard when you bring up like God or a relationship with God or Jesus and stuff. People are like, well, dude, that's like a scary word. But long story short, right, like what we've been doing, we're actually like working in homeless shelters right now. And so there's this group of people who we're providing food and providing just kind of different resources for different homeless shelters, and going out with people and spending time with people, building mentorship programs, working with kids on the college campus. And so people who just like have kind of a lot of things to work through in college age. And so really like it's transitioned from like teaching in a gym, right, and spending time with kids teaching parkour, to just kind of like life in general, and like how to walk with someone through life, and like as they're learning and growing and changing, and like how do we help pull them outside of themselves to actually give back to community and to people. It's crazy how everything that's happened in the gym and everything I've learned from the parkour community is transitioning so eloquently to just passion for people and like the community that we've developed from parkour, because the parkour community is so unique and so special. And getting to grow up with that and then be able to outpour that to other people who may not have had something like that has just been such an incredible journey this last year.
100%, man. Super cool to see. And obviously it speaks volumes of yourself. And, you know, like I said, the Visionary Award isn't going to go to every single person within our community. And so, you know, we need people like yourself and give you a lot of, you know, respect for what you do outside of just your movement, man. So super cool to see.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
Hell yeah. And so, before we get out of here, this is a question I always ask everyone, and I'm sure you know this from watching the episode of Justin, so I'm going to ask you too. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And then where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Yeah, it's great questions, man. I don't know. Dude, I think it's so funny, right? Right, dude, you look back 5 years. 5 years ago, I was running a gym. I was like, dude, there's so much that was happening 5 years ago. Look, like 10 years. That was like, I had just gotten back from Kuwait, like fairly briefly before that, right? And so much happens between 20 and 30, and I'm turning 30 in May, which is super exciting. I don't know, man. I think anything can happen at this point. I think because of shifting out of having a gym, and kind of just being at the mercy of like, you know, what's next? Like, what skill sets do I have? What do I enjoy doing? And how do I step into those? I would imagine in 5 years, man, I think there's a good chance I will be in Grand Junction, because this is home, man. And I think it just like grown such a community of people here, and there's just such a special connection with this area. And it's so easy to get other places. It's a very central location to like Salt Lake and Vegas and Denver. But I think I'm going to end up going to a lot more places. I think I'm going to be hopefully taking more part in movement things like competitions and events. Hopefully back into somewhat of what it would look like to be prime training in 5 years, right? Like actually have some goals within that to get back into that space. But as far as like, you know, being defined by what I do and work and stuff like that, I have no idea, man. I think it's such a special place to be because it allows room for things to happen. And I'm not like worried about it. I'm not stressed about it. It's like, man, I believe that wherever I end up, it will be exactly where I'm supposed to be. And so it's kind of an interesting spot. 10 years, same question. That's even more so. Outside of those lines, it's like, I have no idea. But yeah, I have a lot of faith that it'll be awesome. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hell yeah, man. Well, you know, like I said, the coolest thing about this is not only getting the chance to reconnect with you, but also have something that we can look back on and have this, you know, shared forever. And so, yeah, it's really great to catch up and provide, you know, some of the new generation with your story. It's someone who, like I said, I viewed as a pivotal figure within the American parkour movement back in the days. And so I appreciate you coming on here, and more than anything, wish you continued success in everything you're doing with your ventures, but also with your health, man. It's good to see that things look like they're on a much positive track right now, and looking forward to catching up again sooner, you know?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, man. Seriously, such an honor.
Hell yeah. So, before we get out of here, can you just let people know where they can continue to follow you and stay up to date with your own personal journey?
Yeah. So I've been pretty lacking on the posting on my Instagram, but I do post on stories quite a bit. So it's just at Vinnie Coryell, VINNIE CORYELL. That's going to be the best place to also get in touch with me too. So like, if there's anything on this podcast that people have questions about or want to talk to me more about, like, I love communicating with people and talking. And so feel free to shoot me a message on there and reach out. But that's going to be probably the best place to follow and see what I'm doing.
Hell yeah. Yo, with that being said, guys, please be sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe for brand new episodes each and every week. Join us every Monday for Jam Breakdowns and every Friday for brand new JAMCast, interviewing influential members of the movement community like Mr. Vinnie Coryell himself. So with that being said, guys, I got to give one more very special shout out. Thanks for coming through, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Hell yeah.
Appreciate you, man.
And as always, guys, coming through, I'm your host, Travis Wong. Thanks for joining us here on another JAMCast. Until next time, we'll see you all soon. Peace.